With advancements in automotive technology coming out of every single corner of the globe day after day, it seems that most of society is tempted more than ever to pack up their old models and trade them in for the next best thing. However, there are those of us, like myself, that like to go back to the past sometimes and revisit some of the vehicles that have paved the way and become springboards for the cars that we know and love now. And to discuss this topic, I've been given the keys to one of the most underrated and, dare I say, one of the more unloved mid-size CUVs to ever come out of Japan. You know, it's so hard for me to believe that it's been 2 years since I last drove what now was Mazda's premier 3-row CUV. And in all honesty, I don't remember it being the best one that I ever drove, but nor do I ever remember it being the worst one that I've ever drove. And I've driven the first generation CX-9, and we all know how that went because, of course, that was when Ford had a hand in Mazda's vehicle lineup. But now with Mazda doing their own thing and graduating forward in pretty significant leaps and bounds, and with me being on the fringes of driving the new CX-90, I felt it was only fair to give this final year CX-9 a proper send-off and really give you guys exactly my own thoughts of how I really feel about this car. Now, as much as I want to be my typical self and spout off all kinds of performance figures and all kinds of numbers that'll make your head spin, let me just begin by saying that the CX-9, now that I've gotten a chance to revisit it, really is a true Jekyll and Hyde family car. And I know I've said that about like performance cars, you know, like a Miata or, you know, the Lexus LC500 or cars of that nature. But I've rarely, if ever, used that term with a 3-row family vehicle. And the reason why that term keeps coming to mind for me is because, yes, this car is very comfortable, it's very relaxed, it will waft you down the road no matter what the weather, and it feels as smooth as possible. However, being the fact that Mazda loves to inject a little bit of that sporty personality into every single vehicle that they make, well, it isn't just the engine and the long-legged gears in this 6-speed Skyactiv transmission that really make this car worth the while. The CX-9, in some ways, makes you feel a little bit more like a driver. Okay, I wouldn't take it to your favorite racetrack, but at the same time, the steering is much more heavy, especially with the signature trim having the iActive all-wheel drive as standard, and it gives you a little bit more confidence in the way you feel driving this car down the road. Now, on the Jekyll side of things, I would love to put my foot down at any given time and just blast off up the freeway. Obviously, I don't want to do that because, number one, I'm stuck in traffic right now, but number two, you don't need to do that. The 2.5-liter Skyactiv Turbo 4-cylinder feels like it's got big bowels way down low, and you don't need to use the entire length of the gas pedal travel in order to get the potency and performance out of it. You just need to poke it just a little bit. This is going to be about half gas. I mean, there is a little bit of a delay in the transmission because, again, it's only got 6 gears in it, and it's not neck-snapping performance, but it's smooth. It's just this constant wave of torque as 310 maximum foot-pounds of torque and 250 maximum horsepower push you down the tarmac. And when it comes to its livability factor, well, the CX-9 also is a bit of a two-sided coin. Jekyll and Hyde two-sided coin, however you want to call it. Because as much fun as it is to make you feel like a driver, that sporty attitude does come at a bit of a disadvantage. Even though I'm sitting in traffic right now, I'm only doing about 30 miles an hour. For one, I can feel every single nuance in the road. The tire noise is a little bit on the louder side, but at slower speeds, it can be perfectly quiet. You don't have to scream to your passengers or nothing. Once you start getting up to the higher speeds though, you do feel like you have to raise your voice ever so slightly. And on that note as well, aside from the road noise and the feeling coming through the suspension, the little 4-cylinder up front having to do so much work to haul this vast CUV down the road, well, it does get a little bit noisy. I mean, if you just give it a little bit more, I mean, it smoothens out once you give it a little bit more gas, but just at slower speeds, you know, below, say, about 2,500 RPM, you get this annoying, like, buzz from the engine, and it translates through the dashboard and into the seats and everything, and it just doesn't really inspire confidence when you're spending this kind of price tag. Now, in the face of what should be some pretty intense scrutiny, especially compared to the brand new CX-90, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the CX-9 is still not a bad looking CUV. There are some things about its design that I'm not so big a fan of, but I think the likes sort of dwarf the dislikes with this one. You can definitely tell that it is a Mazda product. The code of design language is everywhere, which is of course sort of basing their styling not only on a simple yet elegant profile, but also injecting a little bit more animalistic characteristics with it, if you will. With its big long nose, I sort of see the front end of a shark. And you also see a pretty gaping mouth on that more shark-like profile with this monstrous grille here, which I'm appreciative. They put some silver on it for the signature trim, but it is so big, especially when you compare it to the LED high and low beams, your LED daytime running lights, and your LED headlights itself. You also have LED turn signals and LED fog lights down there in the corner. And of course, the front and rear are festooned with all kinds of electronic toys. This one has a 360 camera. It has the forward collision warning and adaptive radar cruise control as standard, and the intuitive park assist that goes across the bottom. And at 199.4 inches long, the CX-9 is not a small CUV by any stretch of the imagination. However, again, compared to its replacement, this is where this car does fall a little bit short. It's short by about 1.5 inches lengthwise, but the key difference is that the CX-90 stretches its wheelbase by 5.5 inches overall. That is a huge difference when it comes to overall ride quality and comfort. Now, speaking of wheels, this is one downside I'm not so much a fan of with the CX-9, especially here on an over $50,000 CUV. It is the wheels. These 20-inch graphite painted alloys wrapped in 255 50 series Falcon tires. I mean, they look good, but if you're going to spend over 50 grand, at least be a little more flashy. I mean, I know the paint color is one of my faves, but not so much with these. I think like a machine face with a black painted insert would have looked a little bit nicer. So as far as a wheel choice go, definitely not my favorite. Now for 50 grand, it is a little bit disappointing as you go down the side here. I mean, you get the power folding mirrors with the LED turn signals in the side, blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert are included as standard, and you have a standard size power tilting and sliding sunroof. No panoramic on this one here. As a matter of fact, I think the only Mazda crossover that's gotten a panoramic roof is the CX-50, and more obviously, you get Mazda's advanced keyless access as standard with buttons like lock, unlock, power tailgate, and panic, plus the hidden key blade that can be released from inside, used for manually locking and unlocking the vehicle, which I do like the fact they actually stuck a keyhole on the side of this thing and didn't make you have to pull some piece of trim off in order to lock or unlock the car should either the car or the key go dead. But the thing that's really disappointing to me is the fact that even though it's got a much nicer key fob, there are no touch pads or touch points on the outside or inside of the door handle to allow you to lock or unlock the car. Simply, there's just a little button here. Like Mazda's of previous, you push it once, you can see 2 beeps indicates it's unlocked, and you could either push that button again to lock the car, or you could just simply walk away from it, and as soon as you walk away a certain distance, the car will actually lock itself for you. And while I may have said that the front of this thing looks like a shark, the rear of the CX-9, it's a little more akin to a humpback whale compared to a full-blooded shark. I mean, you have a fin of some kind back here with the little spoiler going across the top, but the rear is big, round, kind of bulbousy, not really the greatest thing to me aesthetically. You've got LED taillights, turn signals, and reversing lights, pretty much the same thing as up in the front. Also, same as the front, you have the rear half of the park assist. You've got a backup camera back here, of course, and as to be expected on a fully loaded CUV, you have a power tailgate. Now, you could use the key, you could use the touchpad under the Mazda badge, or in this case, you can kick your foot under the rear tailgate, and watch as it majestically rises thanks to the hands-free access. Now, I've put a little bit of stuff back here to demonstrate the fact that most mid-size CUVs do not have a whole lot of room behind the third row seats. Now, if you were to fold that down, behind the third row is about 14.5 cubic feet. Fold down the third row, that's about 38.5. Fold down all the seats up to the second row, and you're looking at 71.2 cubic feet of space. Now, that's not necessarily great considering the fact that, again, a lot of its competition and even its newest successor are a lot larger than this. So if you're looking for the most spacious three-row, this ain't gonna be it. But if you want to do it in the most stylish way, well, you may be looking at it right here. Now, as we've seen in the past, Mazda certainly does know how to make a very artistic and very beautiful interior in pretty much any car that they build. And of course, over its history, the signature trim of any Mazda vehicle has always been the top dog. And you can see it in this example that we have here. From the Nappa leather seats and the parchment color here with the black piping, you got the two-tone black accents everywhere, and even smaller things like the rosewood accents here on the center console. You've got them here on the door as well, mixed in with a little bit of chrome and black piano just to kind of break things up a little bit. But unfortunately, even in the midst of all this craftsmanship, it's some of the finest details that make this thing feel, to me at least, like it's still stuck a good few years in the past. And when I say that this interior looks dated or that it's stuck a few years in the past, I do not mean in any sense of the word that this is a bad looking interior. You guys have heard me say it before, whether it's in the CX-9 or a Mazda 3, Mazda builds one of the better looking interiors that I've seen in the non-premium segment. However, the word that keeps coming back to me in this case is familiarity. The interior of this car, we've seen it for so many years that it has just grown so long in the tooth, it was about time for it to get a serious upgrade, and obviously that's what the company did with this car's replacement. But sitting here in front of me, I mean, the steering wheel, we've seen it before, it's leather wrapped, it's heated in this case, which is a nicety, and it has the ubiquitous paddle shifters here on the back, which are kind of small, but they add enough of that sporty flavor to an otherwise regular family CUV. But I mean, the buttons, we've seen them before as well, the radar cruise control, the hands-free Bluetooth voice recognition, volume, the ubiquitous info button that allows you to change the information in the digital part of your gauge cluster, and even the stuff over to the left of the manual tilt and telescope steering column, like your power tailgate, your 360 camera, the lane keep assist, and even your park distance control or park assist. Those are all things that we just see so commonplace nowadays. Now, if you're the sort of person who's more technology minded and you're expecting the biggest, baddest, and best of everything out of your $50,000+ midsize CUV, well, you may or may not like the infotainment system. Now, I'm always a bit of a tech head, and unfortunately, the Mazda system for me has kind of had a little bit of a double-edged sword. It can be very good. Paired with the 12-speaker BOSE audio system, it's a great system to use. However, the Mazda Connect infotainment system itself, paired with a 10.25-inch screen these days, which is on a little bit of a smaller side here in 2023, has been a little bit hit and miss. Let me explain. The first thing is the navigation. It is just not good for this car at all. I'd much rather use Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, anything like that, using the standard Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is not wireless in this car, by the way. For 50 grand, you'd expect wireless CarPlay or wireless Android Auto or some combination of the two, but the only thing wired in or wireless in this car is the wireless charger down here below the front half of the climate control. Now, the Mazda Connect system is not bad. The responsiveness is pretty good, although I'm not so much a fan of using the click and scroll wheel because sometimes it's a little directionally challenged, but overall, it's not that bad. And I mentioned that audio system earlier, and to be fair, Mazda has had a great partnership with BOSE over the years, and the sound system on this with its Centerpoint and Audio Pilot technologies is still one of the better ones I've heard outside of the luxury car market. Now, don't just think that because the occupants in the front have all the technology up there, that you can't have a little bit of fun back here in the second row at the same time. Well, I say fun, but it's not so much fun if you're a taller person like myself. I'm sitting directly behind where I sit as a driver, and I'm over 6 feet tall. And I have to sit pretty much bolt upright if I need to get any kind of space between my knees and the back of the seat itself. If you're like most people and you want to relax a little bit, you know, slink down in the seat, well, my knees are now directly in the back of the driver's seat. That said, I also feel like I'm in a movie theater back here because the Signature gives you a standard set of captain's chairs. So you have separate seats for each of the second row occupants with this fixed partition here in the middle. And it's quite cool actually because you've got these sizable cup holders here in the middle. You've got heated outboard seats. You've got a separate zone for the climate controls back here in the second and third row. And you've even got a nice little bit of storage with this split level or this split center console here. So all the same, I mean, you have all the creature comforts you can want back here, including sunshades at the same time. But if you're a little bit taller like me and you have a little bit of a taller driver, you may expect a bit of a squeeze back here. Oh, and if you're expecting to get any kind of space out of the third row, well, it really just depends on how tall you are and, as Jeremy Clarkson would say, how much you had for lunch as well. Because with the second row seat pushed forward, you can see I actually have a decent bit of room. But if you have people in the second row, like most people who buy these CUVs would, well, that is going to come at the expense of your third row occupants. Now, I've just locked the seat into its first position, which means that now your second row passenger with a taller driver in this case would have even less leg room than I just showed you. So if you're a little bit over 6 feet or right around that height, you still can fit back here. However, as you can see, my knees have raised up a good bit because the floor sits a lot higher. Now, you really don't have too much in the way of creature comforts back here, except for 1, 2 USBs back here for your third row occupants. But also keep in mind that if you are a taller person like myself, your face and your head are definitely going to be blocking the driver's vision headed out the back. But even so, after driving a few hundred miles with the new CX-9 and gulping down most of a tank of gas, I will say that although we've been a bit harsh on this thing, because it's been a little bit behind the times in pretty much every single area, I really do feel that this still deserves a place in Mazda's history. It's been a fantastic vehicle to drive during the week that I've had this thing, and over the 4 separate times that I've gotten to spend with, again, what was Mazda's premier 3-row family vehicle. But on that note, this now wraps up our review and drive of this final year of the CX-9, and if you guys enjoyed what you see, please give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, I always appreciate the support, and I want to continue doing stuff like this for you guys in the future. At the end of the day though, my thanks goes right back to Mazda USA for lending us the CX-9 one last time, again before the new kid on the block gets into my grip. But anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see y'all next time. Take care everybody. Stay safe.